Will we manage to staunch this flow of corruption and lance that particular boil that has been bedeviling this country for the longest time? As you can see, the trunk is here, the branches are spread out every which way. Will it just be a Herculean task for the 3 M's of government to do it? Or are the 3 M's of government also part of this trunk, as you can see it there, with the 3 branches of government steeply also rooted in corruption? This is what Ozona has done today, discussing Mount Kenya politics as well. And you can see that kingpin, all the king's seats, people who are trying to jostle one another to actually capture that particular seat, as we can see the crown being shared there by Ndini Nyoro and also the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who has pronounced this as very juvenile and childish of the Mount Kenya politics currently. All right, I'm holding up this morning with Professor Peter Kagwanya, who's the CEO of Africa Policy Institute. Also, we do have with us Dr. Hassan Kaneje, who is the director of the Horn Institute, the Horn Institute Strategic Studies. Also, we do have with us Professor Mashara Munene, who is a historian, and we continue pace with the conversation. We just want to gravitate now, unless I think you were to discuss and talk about the corruption issue within the judiciary. Briefly.
Yeah, so first I wanted to just go back to the issue that brought it up, which was the president saying there was corruption in the judiciary and the judiciary responding. And that created some tension. And I think it was very wise and constructive for the president to call for a meeting, because it seems this issue, this tug of war between the executive and the judiciary was overwhelming and taking the attention from the normal functions of the state. So I think it was good that the president, the judiciary, and the legislature met. But the core issue that brought up this meeting is the issue of corruption. And I think what had come out of this meeting, and one of the positive elements, is the declaration that all the 3 branches of government have this problem. It is not uniquely judiciary, so it's a national problem. It's a societal problem in which we need to deal with the importance it requires. And to a certain extent, what has come out of this meeting relating to the problems affecting all the 3 branches is the biblical saying that first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you would see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. In other words, the judiciary was telling the other 2, look, let's deal with this issue holistically. And I think that is the best way to go about it, because corruption is a cancer. It's a cancer that has spread to the body politic of Kenya. And it requires a concerted effort by all the 3 branches, the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive, working together in order to roll it back. Because unless we're able to do that, it is going to continue to affect all the aspects relating to our governance in the near future, or even in the long term. And I think it is a good start if there is a commitment in these 3 branches, and there is real desire to deal with this issue, then we can start seeing some results. But otherwise, the public would just see that this was another spat between the leadership of the country, and things would move on without dealing with the critical issues that we face as a country and as a society.
All right, let's hear from Professor Munene as well. You can weigh in on the issue of the judiciary. I know you've been also following that particular spot that has been ongoing until the meeting that we just had recently, that we have also the Law Society of Kenya disparaging, so to speak, the Chief Justice on her visit to the State House, and saying, that was such a blow to the judicial community or officers, that they are not having, or is not exuding any confidence or engendering any confidence within that particular community. What is your say?
Well, thank you. First, I think it was very unfortunate that we are having this discussion. because it should not be there.
It should not be there in the first place.
There. I think the optics, the imagery being given is terrible. The impression that the judiciary is under the thumb. Whether it is or not is not the issue. But the very impression itself creates doubt about the judiciary. Not that it has been very clean. Now, there is a myth that is propounded everywhere about the equality of the three branches of government. It's a myth.
It's a myth.
It's a myth. Because the presidency is first among equals. And that's why sometimes it's the president who has the responsibility for anything that goes wrong in the country, ultimately. So when the three meet, you can see that there is one above the other. But there is also that requirement that this one should not be dictating things.
So he has to be tempered by...
It has to be tempered. And the arrangement is that the others can say we are doing something is wrong. But that dominance of the presidency is not just here, almost everywhere. Creates that impression. I mean, the others try very hard not to appear to be subordinate, although we know they are subordinate. The issue of corruption is everywhere, and it is institutional in the structures. When Shimua is here, can talk about it. So it said what? Corruption starts in the budgeting. So they create things that are actually corrupt.
It's budgeted, actually.
Into the document. So you try to talk about it, you say, what are you talking about? So it's a mentality thing. And it's not so much that Dr. here was talking to somebody. If the structure itself is wrong, now we've been told by MPs themselves that they get bribed in the toilet before they pass anything. Now, imagine that. So the laws that have been passed are questionable because the MPs are not thinking properly. They are not looking after the interest of the country. They are being bribed, and we have been told that openly, that this is what has happened. Okay, we are told the judiciary is corrupt. I don't think there are many people who would complain about that complaint, because you just listen to people, yes, there is corruption in the judiciary. But it helps the country to imagine that the judiciary at least is independent. So what has happened now is to remove that impression that you can go to court and get a hearing. Now, the impression being created is even if you go to court and the court have been ordered by somebody somewhere that they should come up with this, it's not a very good thing. I think the president has made mistakes, serious mistakes, when he and his people announce in public that they will ignore court orders. Then what are the rest of the people supposed to do? If the person who is supposed to be the symbol of the state, to give the moral guidance and everything, says, I will not obey. And then others follow and they say, we are not going to do it. And you see politicians standing on podiums and they say, telling the president, don't obey. The impression, the image is not very good. That does not mean that they should never talk. We know they talk. Okay? But this public display, because this is just antics, public antics, in order to get their way. In other places, we know, sometimes the president and the chief justice might even have some dinner, and you don't hear about it. And in the process, they understand what the issues are, okay? And they might find a nice way. But the public will not know it. So there'll be no doubt in the public mind of what may happen thereafter. A story is told in the United States. President Eisenhower, in the 1950s. And there was this big case coming, the Brown case, on desegregation. And so the Chief Justice, Warren, and the President were having dinner. And so the President tried to indicate about that, the Southerners are not very bad people, the implication when you're making this final decision, remember these are not bad people. Of course, our Warren was not amused by that sort of thing. And they went on and decided the way they thought was fair. They declared the segregation illegal and constitutional. But that's just one episode. So there are many, whereby you even have contest, who is more powerful than the other, the judiciary or the presidency. And since we copy a lot of things from the United States, whether by design or whatever, the other days of the U.S. The presidency, there was a big fight between the presidency and the judiciary, an extremely one. And the president tended to lose that fight because you have a Chief Justice Marshall who asserted the authority of independence of the judiciary. And whatever the president was trying to say was told, no, it's not proper. It's not proper. And although it was public, there was that impression created that the judiciary really is independent. The impression we are creating now is that the judiciary is not independent, which is wrong.
So your assessment is that, yes, when we have the three arms of government, as Professor is putting it, that the presidency is first among the equals.
Yes, it is.
So it's got an upper hand.
By design.
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. Let's hear from Dr. Hassan Kaneja so that we can wind up on this. First of all, even as we're winding up, I wanted just to ask, even if he has the upper hand as it is, with the broadside declarations and besmirching of the judiciary, that they are corrupt and will not follow court orders, as you said, that was also unbecoming of a president. The question would be again, is this just a political theater that we've been experiencing and subjected to as a public? Because of what import has it brought to Kenyans at the end of the day, other than to lower the confidence of Kenyans towards the judiciary and the judicial system in this country? Because many Kenyans are wondering, okay, if corruption also is, and by the mere fact that we have the Chief Justice going to State House and saying we will deal with corruption, and we'll have NCGA also, which constitutes a lot of other, I think, servicemen in this country, was not the first port of call that should have, this will be the premise of EACC, this should be the premise of other bodies, other than saying that we will deal with the corrupt officials in JCC. Let me hear from, before you come to, so that, all right, okay, fine. All right,
because I think there is a misperception here. The fact that the president had a problem with the judiciary and went public, by itself meant that, in fact, he did not have any authority to change the power relationship. And therefore, he made his declaration in a public place. And then, having noted that, in fact, there was nothing he could do about the judiciary, he suggested that perhaps they should resolve whatever issues that had come out in those public discussions through a meeting. And to argue that, in fact, the judiciary's, the enormous powers that the judiciary has under our constitution can be watered down by one-day meeting is really not correct. So what I'm saying is that the president already knows his limitations constitutionally. And instead of using force, or as the old days people used to think that the president could do anything, is that we do not have that all-powerful president that we used to have. And the best thing that he has done, he has been able to meet and have a discussion to sort out some of the problems that are there. So that does not mean in any way that, in fact, the president has powers over the judiciary, nor does he have powers over the legislator. But maybe through dialogue and discussion, the three branches of government can have a better working relationship than is normally the case. So people don't understand the powers of these three institutions. That's why I think that there's this perception, which is fed by our history, that in the old days, a president could stand on a roadside event and remove the Chief Justice or remove a judge or jail a judge or jail a member of parliament or whatever. Those days are gone. And I think our institutions are in place. Our constitution is the guiding principle. And to argue that a one-day meeting could change all of that.
But it is not the preserve of the president.
True,
it's not the preserve of the president to tell the judiciary that we're going to disburse some money to aid the appointment of 34 judges. I mean, that should be the preserve of the legislature, of which you're one of them.
But the legislature was there. The Speaker of Parliament was there. So I don't see any reason why he, as the president of the country, cannot help accelerate some of those things. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that constitution.
Well, it takes to be like...
He's not violating
like
any...
the judiciary is being bribed, so, sort of, with this sort of...
But that is a wrong perception.
Yes.
It's a completely
No, we're
wrong...
just expressing what is within the public domain right now.
But it just doesn't make sense.
Right, it doesn't make any legal sense. So we wind up with you, Dr. Kanenje. What do you think?
Yeah, lots of public sentiments may not make sense, but they're still going to inform our politics. Part of what I would like to agree, first of all, with Prof is, in practice, generally the president is first among equals. He's the commander-in-chief and the only one who can literally declare a state of emergency and suspend the constitution. Okay, and then everybody is really going to be garbaged after that, or at least subservient to him.
Can he suspend the constitution?
Well, people do that when they...
No, but this president doesn't have that power.
No, I'm saying he does it, but we've seen it, elsewhere when people go crazy. And so in theory, this principle separation of powers, we're having co-equal parts of government. I think the challenge we're facing today, it is not so much that the president is complaining about the judiciary. The truth is, it happens in the United States. Depending on how the Supreme Court rules, there are people who are going not to be very happy with it. Today, as we speak, the Supreme Court in the United States is made up of 6 Republicans, political conservatives, and 3 Democrats. So more than likely, they're going to be ruling in a certain way. I think where the problem comes is that in the last 10 or so years, perhaps 20, increasingly the judiciary has been emerging as one institution that Kenyans have confidence in. Not so much because there is no corruption, but because of the manner in which they've been ruling, especially on some of these major fundamental cases, including the nullification of presidential election. Last week we discussed that Kenyans generally don't have a lot of confidence in our major institutions in this country. If you have to be honest again, if you were to take a poll, what's Kenyans' perception of Parliament? It is in the toilet. We talk about it is true, and it sounds harsh, but we have to work. We have to work on that perception because there's some parliamentarians like Mheshimiwa who are working so hard, and they're not exactly beating up people like someone from Mumias, Yes. So the executive, it's been a pandemic, problem, a perception. Didn't start with this administration. It's been going on for a very long time that we need to be able to deal with. And it's true. I like the wording and the recognition from that meeting that corruption is an existential threat to Kenya. I frame it as actually as a national security threat to this republic. And so the president, and that meeting recognizing that, communicating that message, it's actually true. And we have to deal with it. But one thing I guess we need to avoid is this kind of public kind of arguments, because when parents don't seem to have confidence in each other, children are going to have confidence in the unity of the family, even going forward. So we need still to be able to build that confidence. And our politicians don't help very much. And I'm just saying this because, as we have said, you're having people. The president doesn't want to disobey the law, but then you can have a politician saying, you should ignore everybody. And he hasn't said he's going to ignore that. The same politicians, Prof, are the ones recently who got us into diplomatic issues because the statements some of them were making with regard to Kenya's role in the region, literally frustrating the president's effort to actually be a peacemaker in the region. And so we really need to be measured but cognizant of, one, as public figures, that what we say do matter when it comes to shaping the perceptions of citizens and shaping their confidence in government. Two, how we act also matters, not just for us, but to the rest of the world in the region that actually looks up to us. And so we should just stop behaving badly and at least start being more responsible citizens and leaders.
Right. Even as we're winding up, Professor Peter Kagwanja, we've had Mheshimiwa Yusuf picking up a verse and saying, don't just look at the speck in my eye. What about the log in your eye? The fact that we have the presidency or the executive also pointing out about the issues of corruption. Still, we, the cabinet, there are some people also who are embroiled in corruption as well. Where do we begin to slay this corruption issue? Is it just an Herculean task, or is this the what did we call him? Sisyphus syndrome that will just be pushing the boulder up and then it will be rolling down on us as well? We've never managed to actually touch the flow of corruption in this country. So when we hear about corruption, it just we gloss over it because tell me another thing.
Let's start where the debate started, because without getting too deep into it, because I 100% agree with what Mheshimiwa said here about the nature of our society, and it's not going to change unless we change the new constitution. That the president is a superior of the three. Well, it is what they call the principle of primus inter pares, that if all are equal, but there is one who is more equal than others. And the Constitution basically gives that power to the president. Remember, he's the only one who is directly elected by Kenyans. And not just elected, but is required to have 50% plus one, meaning he's there. When the swearing comes, he's the one who is solely sworn to protect the Constitution. And therefore, whereas members of parliament are also elected, the speaker is elected, but there is a special angle to the election of the president. Why? When the three meets, he's the chair, the executive. Remember also the functioning of the other two largely depends on the presidency or the executive. Why? Because it's the executive that is given two superior powers. One, to execute policy, and two, to what they call the monopoly over instruments of violence. By law, not by the fact that one is a dictator in the office. By law, therefore, for judiciary to enforce anything, to jail, or for their decision to be executed, it depends on the executive. For its rules to be done, for example, even the budgeting and everything, the payments of these, it depends on the executive. So what does that mean? It means that these three arms of government need to constantly talk, because there is no conflict in their responsibilities. The legislature makes law, judiciary, judges or rather administers the law in terms of its, whether it is wrong or right, and the executive basically executes simply that. And in order for the country to be functional and not dysfunctional, the three must work hand in hand. Now, what is at issue is corruption, which, according to the president, is rooted in judiciary, and which, according to the judiciary, that you have to remove the log in your eye before you deal with the speck in my own. And legislature is quiet, but as I said at the beginning, our perceptions are different, because the corruption begins at the level of budgeting and the execution of that budget. So we all agree, as Dr. Kanenja has said here, that corruption is an existential threat, and if you wish, a security threat to our country. Now, for the three to sit down and discuss corruption as a team, I would see that as a positive development. Now, where they are coming from is not very good, because the president started by, having a holier-than-thou attitude about the judiciary. Obviously, the judiciary started by defending itself, and therefore went to this meeting as a weak party that is accepting that we are going here to discuss corruption. There must be more issues to discuss than just corruption. And therefore, when the president agreed that he's going to meet some of these obligations to the judiciary, then it looks like judiciary is being bribed. Or rather, what judiciary got out of this meeting are these goodies that is going to dish out to its members. All these are misconceptions that I would say. The truth of the matter is that our system is functional. 2, the 3 meeting is good for the nation. 3, that corruption is an existential threat to us and it need to be dealt with. And finally, to say that it is important for us to stop politicking. For example, it would be wise for the president not to say anything is bad in this country, because whatever brush he uses is what paints the country. Because he's the newsmaker, the supreme newsmaker in the land, the supreme decision maker in the land. So if he decides today that Professor Kagwanja is a criminal, 90% of this society will believe. They have to be convinced otherwise that he is not a criminal. Because he has the power to pronounce judgment over things. So when he utters and says the judiciary is corrupt, that in itself is really, really not good for our constitution. So it's a question of taming our tongues when it comes to pronouncement, because the tongue is the one that curses and it's also the one that blesses. And the moment and the way you use it is very, very important. It is true that the judiciary, in a number of its decisions, was making the implementation of some of the prime projects of the president unworkable by its brothers. But that's what democracy is about. If a civilian go to court and question the housing project, you have to be patient with the civilians. In any case, you are implementing this project on their behalf, not on your own behalf.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you. I just wanted to turn the crack also to the latest development that we do have here, or just following the politics in Mount Kenya briefly, so that we can gravitate also to other issues. Ruto is sending a warning shot to restless Mount Kenya leaders, and he says the president has been sucked into the raging squabbles among his lieutenants in central Kenya, warning restless youthful leaders led by Ndindi Nyoro, who are seeking to upstage President Rigathi Gachagua in Mount Kenya supremacy. And of course, we've been following that lately. I just wanted to get comments. I don't know, we can begin from Yusuf Hassan or Professor Macharia on this rift that is building up in Mount Kenya. Something is simmering, and there seems to be a very huge tectonic shift as far as party loyalty and allegiance is concerned. Some of them also are ruining the day that they actually joined Kenya Kwanza. They're saying they should have actually maintained their own parties instead of collapsing into UDA. I don't know, what is your sentiment so far as you can read the pulse of Mount Kenya politics?
Well, Mount Kenya is confused.
It's confused?
Yes. You have people who aspire to be leaders, and they are going the wrong direction. They show immaturity instead of maturity. So they keep on clobbering, and some of them running around, they think they should be called kings, I don't know of what. Yet in the mountain, the notion of kings,
it doesn't augur well.
No. From the time of Iregi, people don't like kings, because kings tend to be monsters. So there's a general attitude, no kings, and therefore no pins in the process. and you have
kings
people,
and no pins.
No pins.
I like it.
they like consensus from the time of Iregi. Anything that comes up, that's why they have councils. at every place, governing councils, to get rid of the idea that one person can be the one to be saying, you must do this, you must do this. That's not acceptable. Now, what may happen in terms of crisis or need, they pick somebody because that person deserves or has proven ability to be mature, to be a good spokesman, to represent the interest of the people at the time. Right now, there's no one in the mountain who can be said to represent the mountain. So all you have is people jostling for, oh, it's me, it's me, it's me, it's me. And they're lost. So that's why the place looks confused. And when we see some of these people meeting, what happens, Biba? The song is the same, always. Let us unite and you follow me. And everyone says, unite and you follow? So since there are so many people who want to be followed in the name of unity, they end up getting confused. And what you have now is that kind of funny jostling for who to be recognized. It's also misplaced, this, because people are talking about 2027, and others are talking 2032. And they are not even sure which way things will go. So what is likely to happen eventually? Somebody will crop up, given the nature of crises. Somebody will crop up and show the leadership qualities that people aspire to. And then they'll say, that's the one. But now people sitting in a room somewhere, maybe a few wazes and one of women, and they say, we anoint you, we crown so-and-so to be there. It's not going to work because it will be against the principles of somebody gaining position because of qualities that he or she shows. And then people gain trust and say, yes, that's the one. And he cannot be wrong because they would have made the judgment. But this idea of some people sitting somewhere and saying, so-and-so, so-and-so, it's not going to work. And that's what's going on. So since it has also become a political football, I think the president is trying to say, hey, you people, you're disturbing my peace so, with your noise, because it's just noise. It's just noise. And the president has been in office for 1 year, or what's it about, has made some progress here and there, and blunders here and there. So then they're trying to catch up. Give him a chance, and he's not going to get a very good chance if some people are feeling unhappy. One thing one may say is that, yes, the mountain is disgruntled collectively. It's a very big unhappiness in the mountain. There is a feeling of neglect. Whether justified or not is not the issue. But there is a feeling of what? Neglect. And that's part of the reason we are having these, who is failing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, Peter Kagwenja, then we wind up on it.
Now, I'll take it from where Professor Macharia has left it, and just a footnote that Dibal, Professor Macharia and I were in the same class, but I was seated and he was standing. That was the difference, if you understand the fact. Just like Mheshimiwa Yusuf and I were in the same class. He was seated and I was standing. So it's a very interesting connection.
So the posture has changed.
So we have sons, fathers and grandfathers. So
it is intergenerational.
It's intergenerational, and this is how Kenya should figure itself out. This idea of the so-called young Turks and young people who are, who want to, tomorrow on a lighter note and without ridiculing anybody, it will not be unimaginable in this country that somebody will argue that the babies also have rights to be presidents. We're going to there because the rights of children, we push the rights to a certain extreme that you one day perhaps imagine somebody in nappies and in State House. There is a process called growing, because we are told by philosophers that the only real thing there is in life is time. Time is the only real thing. That's why we measure things in time. You know, how long do you work for me? 12 hours, so I pay you for 12 hours. Because it's that difference in times that will create that object what you want. And therefore, there must also be, time must also be relevant in politics. That you cannot be what you want to be before you have spent a good deal of time. Where Professor Macharia and myself, come from, time also matters. Sometimes somebody will ask you, what have you done? You may publish a lot, but people will slow you down because there are other things that you need to get, and it also applies in judiciary and other places. So the problem with Mount Kenya is where Uhuru Kenyatta left us, or let me generally say the Uhuru generation left us. Because I'm talking about specifically about Mount Kenya. Because in 2022, we had the two moments of what in Mount Kenya they call Itweka, or which is basically a change of guard. And we had the change of guard at the national level. Who is going to be the president of the country? And at the region, we had the person who at the regional level will speak on your behalf, not as a tribal chief or kingpin, as we say, but when others meet, who are you going to bring onto the table? So in Ukambani, you'll bring Kalonzo Musyoka or whoever else you want. In Nyanza, you'll bring Raila Odinga. In Western, you'll bring either Wetangula from the Bukusu side or bring Mudavadi from the Maragori side, and they sit on the table. At the coast, you bring Emerson Kingi or Mvuria or whoever else you want to bring, but they are kingpins. In Mount Kenya, who goes? So the failure to pinpoint, before that time, we had no difficulties because Kenyatta was there for us in whichever forum, and therefore he had two hats. He was the president, and at the same time, he was the regional representative. So we didn't have any complaint. The same case was with Kibaki. When Kibaki was in power, he had those two hats. Now, when Uhuru was going, he did not name who is going to be the person after him. And unfortunately, he lost to UDA in the region. And therefore, by virtue of the office, Gachagua becomes the person who is senior most in the politics. Obviously, he's challenged by politics because Jubilee still claims that it is the one which is having the mosaic, Muthegi, which Muthegi is basically the staff of power, which is the instrument of power. That stuff. And what we have been seeing as a tussle is simply that. Up to this point, the tussle has been between Uhuru Kenyatta, and Gachagua, and somewhere in the shadows, Maina Jenga coming up and challenging this. But now the game changes, that the battle moves from the Jubilee versus UDA now into intra-UDA. And the problem here comes when certain number of MPs pronounce Didi Nyoro as the contender for 2027. And therefore, we have already moved from the governing phase to the election phase. And UDA, before it has even started implementing its project, has gotten deep into the 2027 politics. And it is now already cast in the mold of the youth versus the old. The young versus the old, which is basically what we had in 2002, and which is what we have, is kind of coming up now. So when the president says he's going to mentor the youth, he's telling them to cool their heels and wait for their time to come. Learn a few lessons, and let's move on from those lessons.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that is the problem with Mount Kenya, that the transition has not taken place. So we have two layers of battles. The battle between the older generation, the Kenyatta generation, and the UDA generation. and then there is the battle within the UDA,
Right, thank you.
all within Mount Kenya region.
Right, thank you. I think it's a good time now to turn the crack to what is happening also around us. Unless I thought maybe you don't want to contribute on the Mount Kenya politics.
No, why not?
Yusuf Hassan and Dr. Kanenze.
Well, I think
yes.
I think it's not specifically a Mount Kenya issue because
Yes.
we're talking about Kenya in this particular case.
Yes.
And Mount Kenya is not an island. Mount Kenya is an integral part of the Republic of Kenya. And I think there is this danger that I have always seen in our politics, is that somehow there is no separation between campaigns. You know, there's a period of campaign in which people jog for power, and then it ends once a new government is elected. We're now only one year plus, not even 2 years, since this government was elected. And people forget that, in fact, when you're talking about the deputy president, he is the deputy president of Kenya, and that he was elected on a package, on a political package, of which the president was at the head of it, by all Kenyans. So the question every Kenyans outside Mount Kenya are asking is that what happens to the rest of Kenya? What is the thinking of the rest of Kenya? Or is it Mount Kenya that is going to determine the direction, the political direction of this country, regardless of the other nationalities? So I think that is the first point that comes out. The second point is the danger of this permanent campaign mentality that we have in the country. That's every 5 years derails the development process in the country, because the political leadership, the elite, is so obsessed and focused on the next election that you lose track of the national agenda. What is the national agenda? And here there is a danger in the sense that President Ruto would risk, because if this campaign is not brought to an end and there's a more focus on development, then this government is not going to achieve its objective, because its key lieutenants are now in a campaign mood. They have forgotten the pledges that they have made to the Kenyan people, and now they are focusing on 2027 and 2032, which is completely ridiculous in the sense that what Kenyans expect of this particular leadership is to implement the manifesto, the agenda that they pledged to the Kenyan people. And I think the president is right in trying to bring this to a stop by saying, look, you guys, there's no point in this particular campaign. And even the deputy president himself is saying there's really no point, because there's no election. There's no vacancy in the deputy president's position. So what is the point? What are you jogging for? And I think the rest of Kenya is watching to see how this particular debate ends.
What goes around comes around.
Yeah.
We've been here before, and I think in the previous administration, that was the same template. He set the precedent. Now he's got to bear the fruits as well of that particular precedent that he actually set himself. So he's the one now saying, stop the politics, we need to focus on development. Sounds like President Uhuru Kenyatta, right? Maybe on a different microphone.
You know, they used to look like twins. Eh?
They used to look like twins.
I think one thing that amazes foreigners who live in Kenya and who observe Kenya's politics is that we are in a perpetual campaign mode.
Yeah.
We never stop. The only time we're not campaigning is either when we're sleeping or when we die. We always campaigning. And that, I think, takes away from a lot of fundamental issues that we actually should be paying attention to. Now, it is true what Mheshimiwa has said is when it's framed as if, you know, what Mount Kenya is doing, well, this is expected. There is some kind of a vacuum, you know, from the days of Matiba, Kibaki, then Uhuru. Now it's a kind of a real kind of vacuum, and you know, power doesn't exactly like vacuums, so someone is going to try and fill it. However, you know, Kenya is larger than just the politics in one region. And I think it should not be lost on us, especially as we strive to build a nation that, where everyone feels that they belong. And my gut feeling is 2027 is going to be a shocker. I think we're making a lot of assumptions, and perhaps we're going to be best placed if we focus more on trying to build the nation between now and at least 2026, because 2027, the way things are unfolding, I think no one knows what the outcome is going to look like.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Right. Let's leave it at that. All right. We want to see what is happening around us, and we begin in Rwanda and that particular migration bill, where the upper house of Britain's parliament has urged the Conservative government not to ratify a migration treaty with Rwanda. It is largely a symbolic move, but signals more opposition to come for the stalled and contentious plan to send some asylum seekers on a one-way trip to the African nation. The House of Lords voted by 214 to 117 on Monday evening to delay the treaty that paves the way for the deportation plan. The treaty and an accompanying bill are the pillars of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, or Sunak's bid to overcome a block on the deportation by the UK. Supreme Court, we have the House of Lords voted by 214 to 171 evening to delay the treaty. That was on Monday evening, to delay the treaty that paves the way for the deportation plan. I think I'm repeating myself there. But UK's Supreme Court has little practical impact because of the House of Lords can't block an international treaty, and the government says it will not delay. However, ignoring the demand could later be used against the government in a legal challenge. And that is the latest development that we do have there. What does it really portend? We shall also hear from some of the legislators from the floor of the House briefly.
Migration, but the whole continent of Europe. Because I can tell all honourable and right honourable members, having spoken to almost every interior minister and immigration minister, not just in Europe, but in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Turkey, they all ask, when are you getting this policy up and running? Will it work? And they want it to work, because they know if we can create a sustainable deterrent, we will stop people coming, we will secure Europe's borders, we will save lives. And in an age of mass migration, this is one of the most important challenges that we have to face. I'll give way to the right honourable gentleman.
Great.
Sir Chris Bryant.
I completely agree with him about one thing. I don't think this bill will work. I don't think it will work if it has the amendments that he's tabled included in it either. And that is because I think he and I come to a completely different position as to the nature of the deterrence and whether it would work at all. Because it seems to me self-evident that there must be an enormous deterrent if you have to get in a tiny boat, risking your life as a pregnant woman with children beside you, having paid thousands of pounds to a vile, despicable people trafficker. What evidence does he have that this plan, gimmick, is any more deterrent than that?
Here, 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 here.
If the right honourable gentleman were right, then hundreds of thousands of people wouldn't be making that very journey every year. There are millions of people in the world who want to make this journey. There are thousands of people in France seeking to pay people smugglers to come to our country. The only way you will stop this is if you break the people smugglers' business model once and for all. So it is clear, beyond doubt, that if you come to this country, you will be detained and swiftly removed to Rwanda or to another safe country. And where the right honourable gentleman is wrong is he, like the Labour front bench, believe completely erroneously that you can arrest your way out of this problem. Yes. Well, the National Crime Agency don't support them in that contention, and I have not seen any evidence that that will work. Nobody who's looked into this problem believes that these fungible and complex gangs that stretch across Europe and beyond, who import boats for next to nothing from China, Bulgaria and Turkey, can just be arrested out of their existence. Everyone says the same thing: create a deterrent. That is what the Rwanda policy does. I won't give way again to the right honourable gentleman. Let me move forward and speak more directly to our amendments, because that's the purpose of today. The amendments that have been brought forward in my name and that of my honourable friend, the member for Stone, in 4 groups, 2 of which will be heard and discussed today, 2 tomorrow, seek to address the evident flaws of the bill. And they represent the last opportunity for us to get this policy right.
The government of war-ravaged Sudan says it has suspended its membership in the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, the East African regional bloc that has tried to broker talks between the country's warring parties. The announcement was made by the Foreign Ministry, which is loyal to Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the army chief and Sudan's de facto leader. The Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, paramilitary group, that is RSF, have been fighting for 9 months in a war that has killed thousands of people and displaced more than 7 million. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said Burhan sent a letter to President Ismail Omar Guelleh of Djibouti, current chair of IGAD, to inform him of the Sudanese government's decision suspending its membership in this organization. The government had announced this week, it says, that it was freezing its relations with the bloc in advance of a meeting in Uganda on Thursday. After it invited RSF head Mohamed Hamdan, that is Hemedit Dagalo, it accused the bloc of violating Sudan's sovereignty and setting a dangerous precedent.
You have got wars, everything, every small thing is war, everything, war. This is ideological shallowness in our view. So therefore, in our discussion, we captured this, and we really think the parties involved must stop these unprincipled wars. We call these types of wars unprincipled wars.
We also supported the Jeddah process, initiated by the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, despite our deep conviction that African problems must be resolved in Africa by Africans themselves. With IGAD positioned itself, and rightly so, to play its full role for peace, we supported its action and continue to do so. A joint team of experts, including the AU and IGAD special envoys to Sudan, was set up. This team did a remarkable job mapping and sequencing the envisaged political dialogue process, which currently only awaits the green light from the Sudanese stakeholders and the leaders of our 2 organizations for it to be put in motion. To strengthen this effort, the AU Peace and Security Council requested that I appointed a high-level panel on Sudan. This has been done.
As you are all aware, our forum has always provided us with the unique opportunity to collectively engage the deliberations on each and every disturbing development arising in our region and have an open and constructive dialogue on challenging issues that matter most of our nations and peoples.
All right. Those 2 stories will also set as a segue to a discussion on the other side of a break, as also we'll be looking at this particular headline on the front page of East African. Despite apparent thawing of relations between Kenya and Uganda, there are sticking points in the fuel import talks. Kampala wants a license for UNOC, but Nairobi says the Ugandan marketer should embrace competition from Kenyan companies. And the case is in the courts. Friends again, that's their budding question. And we can see President William Ruto here and Uganda President Yoweri Museveni at the IGAD summit on Sudan crisis in Entebbe. Just what we saw, but on the sidelines also, they tried to mend fences regarding the ticklish issue of the oil import. This is the East African this week. And Newsweek as well. Hamas Inc., the financial muscle behind the militant group. We will discuss what is happening also with the Israel and Gaza war. This is a current copy now of the Newsweek, the financial muscle behind the militant group, that is the Newsweek. The week storming ahead. And after Trump's Iowa win, can anyone stop his march to the GOP nomination? That is a story that is being asked here. And we've seen DeSantis now rowing back. Nikki Haley also, she's still on the run. And we can have the story on page 4 of the week as well. This is the US version. This is the UK version of the week. Trump storms ahead. Can anyone stop him now? Is he unstoppable? That is a probing question. And he is winning. Business beware. This is what the economist seems to be projecting. Who's winning? And you can see business beware. The dollar is burning there. That is the latest copy of The Economist. We circle back with more when we look at also what is happening with that Rwandan Asylum Pact and Sudan crisis, also Ethiopia. We have President Al-Sisi now supporting Somalia in this particular dispute that is ongoing with Somaliland. Are there vested interests? Is this because of the Renaissance Dam and the River Nile? We take a short break. You're watching Global Today.